Mostly got it down already. Great. If you haven't, get to work. I'll read these two, and we'll continue with book 21. On first looking into Chapman's Homer by John Keats. Much have I traveled in the realms of gold, in many goodly states and kingdoms seen. Round many western islands have I been, which bards in fealty to Apollo hold. Oft of one wide expanse had I been told that deep-browed Homer ruled as his demesne. Yet never did I breathe its pure serene till I heard Chapman speak out, loud and bold. Then felt I like some watcher of the skies when a new planet swims into his ken, or like stout Cortez, when with eagle eyes he stared at the Pacific, and all his men looked at each other with a wild surmise, silent upon a peak in Darien. The opening of the Odyssey by Homer, translated by Alexander Pope. The man, for wisdom's various arts renowned, long exercised in woes, O muse resound, who when his arms had wrought the destined fall of sacred Troy, and raised her heaven-built wall, wandering from clime to clime, observant strayed, their manners noted, and their state surveyed. On stormy seas, unnumbered toils he bore, safe with his friends, to gain his natal shore. Vain toils. Their impious folly dared to prey on herds devoted to the god of day. The god vindictive doomed them nevermore, men unblessed, to touch that natal shore. O snatch some portion of these acts from fate's celestial muse, and to our world relate. Okay, book 21, page 427. 427. Where did stool go? Where did stool go? Here it is. It is in the back corner. Good. All right, in book 21, what's going on so far? What we have in book 21? What's happened so far to this point? Oh, I've got book 21 questions. Let me just switch those. What's happened so far in book 21?
Didn't somebody know that girl that was bathing the homeless guy? Those bathing Odysseus know that it's now Odysseus.
Right, so in book 20, Euryclea, Penelope's servant, and Telemachus' nurse, recognizes Odysseus when she bathes him from the scar on his knee. So in 21 now, what is it that happens? Where are we in 21, in book 21? In Ithaca, specifically
The house, right?
in Odysseus' palace. Who's there? Who's at Odysseus' palace right now?
Penelope.
Penelope. Who else? Various servants. Telemachus and Odysseus. Yes. Along with Euryclea, this faithful nurse, and Eumaeus, the swineherd with whom Odysseus and Telemachus had been staying. Who else is in the house? Forgot about some very important people.
The suitors?
The suitors, yes, the suitors are still there. All right, so at the beginning of 21, what does Penelope decide to do?
She is to the suitors a challenge.
A challenge. What's the challenge?
To string the bow of Odysseus, and they have to shoot an arrow into the 12 and all of the sword.
Through the axe heads. Right. So they have to first, she brings down Odysseus' bow. And remember, you don't store bows with the string on them. It weakens them over time. So they have to first string the bow, bend it so that they can attach the string to both ends. And then they have to shoot an arrow through the holes in 12 axe heads. And she says, whoever can do that, what? She'll marry him.
Yeah.
She'll marry him. Yes.
Is she still aware that Odysseus is not there?
Right. She does not know that Odysseus is there. She knows this beggar is there. In fact, she was speaking with him the previous night, but she doesn't know that he's Odysseus.
So is it like a good thing for this? Like, is it like good or bad?
It's good. Remember, at the beginning, Homer tells us that Athena put this idea in Penelope's mind. On page 424, the goddess Athena, with her blazing eyes, inspired Penelope to do this. Yes?
Did you read about the dog scene?
The dog scene, no, we skipped that. Yeah, so there are a couple scenes that we skipped, one of which is when Odysseus comes to the palace. The suitors make him fight this other homeless guy. But also Odysseus' dog, his good old faithful dog that he left behind when he went off to the Trojan War, is extremely old and covered with fleas and all this. And it sees Odysseus and recognizes him and is happy to see him and then dies. It's a very nice moment there.
How's that a nice moment?
Because this faithful dog gets to see Odysseus one more time before he dies. Yeah, and 20 years is an extremely long time for a dog to live. All right, so Penelope brings down this bow. There's some things we could say about what her plan is here. Maybe her thought is, well, at least this will bring it to an end. If somebody can do it, great. Then it'll be done. Maybe she's thinking, I don't think any of them can do this. And so it'll just be another way of stalling. But either way, she brings down the bow. And she issues this challenge to the suitor. So here on page 427, she's going to hand the bow to Eumaeus. So starting 4 lines from the top of the page. She turned to Eumaeus, ordered the good swineherd now to set the bow and the gleaming iron axes before the suitors. He broke into tears as he received them, laid them down. The cowherd wept too when he saw his master's bow, but Antinous wheeled on both and let them have it. Yokels, fools, you can't tell night from day. You mawkish idiots, why are you sniveling here? You're stirring up your mistress. Isn't she drowned in grief already? She's lost her darling husband. Sit down. Eat in peace or take your snuffling out of doors. But leave that bow right here, our crucial test that makes or breaks us all. No easy game, I wager, to string his polished bow. Not a soul in the crowd can match Odysseus. What a man he was. I saw him once. Remember him to this day, though I was young and foolish way back then. Smooth talk. But deep in the suitor's heart, his hopes were bent on stringing the bow and shooting through the axes. Antinous, fated to be the first man to taste an arrow whipped from great Odysseus' hands. The king he mocked, at ease in the king's house, egging comrades on to mock him too. Antinous, the leader of the suitors here, mocks these 2 faithful servants. Amazing! Prince Telemachus waded in with a laugh. Zeus up there has robbed me of my wits. My own dear mother, sensible as she is, says she'll marry again, forsake our house. And look at me, laughing for all I'm worth, giggling like some fool. Step up, my friends. Here is the prize at issue, right before you. Look, a woman who has no equal now in all Achaean country, neither in holy Pylos, nor in Argos or Messene, not even Ithaca itself or the lonely mainland. You know it well. Why sing my mother's praises? Come, let the games begin. No dodges, no delays, no turning back from the stringing of the bow. We'll see who wins, we will. I'd even take a crack at the bow myself. If I string it and shoot through all the axes, I'd worry less if my noble mother left our house with another man and left me here behind. Man enough at last to win my father's splendid prizes. With that, he leapt to his feet and dropped his bright red cloak, slipping the sword and sword belt off his shoulders. First he planted the axes, digging a long trench, one for all, and trued them all to a line, then tamped the earth to bed them. Wonder took the revelers looking on, his work so firm, precise, though he'd never seen the axes ranged before. He stood at the threshold, poised to try the bow. 3 times he made it shudder, straining to bend it. 3 times his power flagged, but his hopes ran high he'd string his father's bow and shoot through every iron. And now, struggling with all his might for the 4th time, he would have strung the bow. But Odysseus shook his head and stopped him short despite his tensing zeal. God help me, the inspired prince cried out. Must I be a weakling, a failure all my life? Unless I'm just too young to trust my hands to fight off any man who rises up against me. Come, my betters, so much stronger than I am. Try the bow and finish off the contest. He propped his father's weapon on the ground, tilting it up against the polished, well-hung doors, and resting a shaft aslant the bow's fine horn. Then back he went to the seat that he had left. Up, friends, Antinous called, taking over. One man after another, left to right, starting from where the steward pours the wine. Who's the first one to try this challenge? Telemachus. Can he do it? Can he do it? He can, but does he? No, why not? Why does he not do it?
He doesn't want to
He doesn't want to what?
have decisions. If he does,
Well, if he could win this challenge first, then they wouldn't get a chance at it.
yeah, but he doesn't want to.
Is he trying to test like Penelope's sleep?
Doesn't have to do with testing Penelope. Look on page 428. And now, struggling with all his might for the fourth time, he would have strung the bow, but Odysseus shook his head and stopped him short, despite his tensing zeal. He almost does it, and Odysseus catches his eye. No, not yet. Not yet.
Why not yet?
We'll see. Odysseus has a better plan in mind.
He likes what's up with Odysseus? Bro?
So
He likes mind games.
yes, he does. The man of twists and turns, Homer calls him. The man of twists and turns. Both in terms of his wanderings, but also in terms of his mind. He's always scheming. 429 at the top there. So Antinous urged, and all agreed. The first man up was Leodes, Enop's son, a seer who could see their futures in the smoke, who always sat by the glowing wine bowl, well back, the one man in the group who loathed their reckless ways, appalled by all their outrage. His turn first. Picking up the weapon now and the swift arrow, he stood at the threshold, poised to try the bow, but failed to bend it. As soon as he tugged the string, his hands went slack, his soft, uncalloused hands, and he called back to the suitors, friends, I can't bend it. Take it, someone try. Here's a bow to rob our best of life and breath, all our best contenders. Still, better be dead than live on here, never winning the prize that tempts us all, forever in pursuit, burning with expectation every day. If there's still a suitor here who hopes, who aches to marry Penelope, Odysseus' wife, just let him try the bow. He'll see the truth. He'll soon lay siege to another Argive woman trailing her long robes and shower her with gifts. And then our queen can marry the one who offers most, the man marked out by fate to be her husband. With those words, he thrust the bow aside, tilting it up against the polished, well-hung doors and resting a shaft aslant the bow's fine horn. Then back he went to the seat that he had left. But Antinous turned on the seer, abuses flying. Leodes, what are you saying? What's got past your lips? What awful, grisly nonsense. It shocks me to hear it. Here's a bow to rob our best of life and breath? Just because you can't string it, you're so weak. Clearly, your genteel mother never bred her boy for the work of bending bows and shooting arrows. We have champions in our ranks to string it quickly. Hop to it, Melanthius, he barked at the goatherd. Rake the fire in the hall, pull up a big stool, heap it with fleece, and fetch that hefty ball of lard from the stores inside. So we young lords can heat and limber the bow and rub it down with grease before we try again and finish off the contest. The goatherd bustled about to rake the fire, still going strong. He pulled up a big stool, heaped it with fleece, and fetched the hefty ball of lard from the stores inside. And the young men limbered the bow, rubbing it down with hot grease, then struggled to bend it back, but failed. No use. They fell far short of the strength the bow required. Antinous still held off, dashing Eurymachus too, the ringleaders of all the suitors, head and shoulders the strongest of the lot. So after Telemachus' first suitor tries it, Leodes. What do we learn about Leodes? What detail does Homer give us about him on page 429? He's not the son of a seer. He is a seer. What do you mean a seer?
Like he can see the future.
He can tell the future. And what does Leodes say after he tries to string the bow but fails?
Failed to marry.
So he fails to bend it, and then what does he say? He doesn't say nobody can. He says, well, what does he call the bow?
He calls it.
A bow to rob our best of life and breath. What does that mean, a bow to rob our best of life and breath? Right, a bow. This is a bow which could kill the best of us. Antinous, after this, he says, what are you saying? What's got past your lips? What awful, grisly nonsense. It shocks me to hear it. How can you say that? Wow, this bow is so amazing, it could kill all of us. Why would you say something like that?
Tell them how severe it is or how positive it is.
Maybe. Or maybe this is his gift of sight, of foresight, coming into play. Homer's dropping little hints to us. Homer's already said that Antinous, he said on page 427, he said, Antinous, fated to be the first man to taste an arrow whipped from great Odysseus' hands. He'll be the first one to taste one of Odysseus' arrows. All right, so Leodes tries, and then what do the suitors decide to do? They tell this guy Melanthius, one of Odysseus' servants, to do what? On page 430. Say it again. To heat it up and do what? Yes. And what else do they do? Not just heat it, but also do what? What do they do to the bow on page 430? Heat it with what? So the fleece is this guy puts on the chair by the fire. Ball of what?
The hefty ball of lard.
Lard. What's lard? Good. Talk to Mr. Stolman sometime. Be a good expedition. So, Mr. Stolman has a farm up in Boyd's. Maybe some of you have been there. You've been there?
Oh, yeah.
Boyd's is sort of like I would recommend going and visiting sometimes. They've got rabbits and chickens and sheep, but the thing that they mostly focus on is pigs. They raise pigs, and so I think this weekend they're going to have their first pig slaughter of the year because you have to do it when it's cold. Otherwise, the meat goes bad before we can process all of it. But so a pig, there's tons of fat in the pig, and so lard is pig leaf lard. It's good for baking with. That comes from inside the pig's body. Then there's also lard from the back, which is harder. It's sort of solid. But so here, this is a big ball of pig fat, of lard. You can use lard to make pie crusts and biscuits. It's really good for doing that. Better than butter, a lot of people say. But anyway, so yes. So they get this ball of lard, and they're going to grease it down and warm it up. They're going to warm up the lard so it's nice and soft and liquid, and grease the bow. This bow is made of natural materials. It's made of wood and probably some animal horn also. And over time, these things dry out, like leather. Leather dries out over time. And so if you want to soften it up again, you rub grease into it of some kind. So like shoes, usually this is a wax that we use that's got some pigment in it. That's what shoe polish is. It also helps keep the leather nice and soft. For other things, you might use some other kind of fat or oil in them to help it stay soft and flexible. So that's what they're trying to do here. They figure, well, the bow's been in storage a long time. Maybe it needs to be greased to make it soft again. What was that? For the football? So I don't know. It depends a bit on what type of leather you're talking about, what exactly you want to use on it. So like, you wouldn't want to use, if you rubbed lard or something like that onto like leather that most shoes are made out of, it would sort of ruin it. But if you've got like a pair of thick leather boots, then it would be good for that. There are different types of leather, different ways of making leather. But anyway, so here, that's what they're doing with the bow. They figure, well, this will make it a little easier to pull. And then after they warm up and grease down the bow, they all try it except for whom? Not Odysseus. Antinous and Eurymachus. Who are these two guys? Antinous and Eurymachus. The ringleaders of the suitors. They hold off. They wait. They're not trying it yet. You would think that they're the leaders. They would be the first ones there. Telemachus stepped right up to the plate and says, I'm going to try. I'm going to go first here. What was that? A little bit, all bark and no bite, all bluster and no action. Middle of 4:30. But now the king's two men, the cowherd and the swineherd, had slipped out of the palace side by side, and great Odysseus left the house to join them. Once they were past the courtyard and the gates, he probed them deftly, surely. Cowherd, swineherd, what, shall I blurt this out or keep it to myself? No, speak out. The heart inside me says so. How far would you go to fight beside Odysseus? Say he dropped like that from a clear blue sky and the god brought him back. Would you fight for the suitors or your king? Tell me how you feel inside your hearts. Father Zeus, the trusty cowherd shouted, bring my prayer to pass. Let the master come. Some god guide him now. You'd see my power, my fighting arms in action. Eumaeus echoed his prayer to all the gods that their wise king would soon come home again. Certain at least these two were loyal to the death, Odysseus reassured them quickly. I'm right here in the flesh myself, and home at last after bearing 20 years of brutal hardship. Now I know that of all my men, you two alone longed for my return. From the rest, I've heard not one real prayer that I come back again. So now I'll tell you what's in store for you. If a god beats down the lofty suitors at my hands, come, I'll show you something, living proof. Know me for certain, put your minds at rest. This scar, look, where a boar's white tusk gored me years ago, hunting on Parnassus, Autolycus' sons and I. With that, pushing back his rags, he revealed his great scar. And the men gazed at it, scanned it, knew it well, broke into tears and threw their arms around their master, lost in affection, kissing his head and shoulders. And so Odysseus kissed their heads and hands. Now the sun would have set upon their tears if Odysseus had not called a halt himself. No more weeping. Coming out of the house, a man might see us. Tell the men inside. Let's slip back in, singly, not in a pack. I'll go first, you're next. Here's our signal. When all the rest in there, our lordly friends, are dead against my having the bow and quiver, good Eumaeus, carry the weapon down the hall and put it in my hands. Then tell the serving women to lock the snugly fitted doors to their own rooms. If anyone hears from there the jolting blows and groans of men caught in our huge net, not one of them show her face. Sit tight, keep to her weaving, not a sound. You, my good Felicius, here are your orders. Shoot the bolt of the courtyard's outer gate. Lock it. Lash it fast. With that command, the master entered his well-constructed house, and back he went to the stool that he had left. The king's two men in turn slipped in as well. While the suitors are greasing the bow and trying it, what does Odysseus do? What does Odysseus do while the suitors are greasing down the bow and trying it out? He goes outside the house, just him?
Not to join him.
To join whom?
The cowherd, his name is Swine.
Right, the swineherd, Eumaeus, whom he had been staying with. And then this other guy, this cowherd, who's also faithful to Odysseus. His name is Felicius. So he goes outside with the two of them, and what do they do out there? Talk, and what does he say?
Gives them more order.
He what?
He gives them more order.
He gives them orders. What does he say? Tell them to do. What does he tell them? Well, first, before he gives them orders, he asks them a question. What does he ask them? Right. If Odysseus came back, would you fight for him, or would you side with the suitors? And how do they respond? They said, if only the gods would bring Odysseus back. He would see us fight for him. And then Odysseus reveals himself, again by this scar on his knee, proving that he is Odysseus. All right, so then they have this moment of being reunited. Odysseus gives them orders. He says, here's what we're going to do. What does he tell them to do? Yes, he says, so he tells Eumaeus, when the suitors, when they say that they don't want to let me try, you go and you lock the doors. Or rather, you bring me the weapon and put it in my hands. Then tell the serving women, this is the bottom of 431, then tell the serving women to lock the snugly fitted doors to their own rooms. If anyone hears from there the jolting blows and groans of men caught in our huge net, not one of them show her face. Sit tight, keep to her weaving, not a sound. You, my good Felicius, here are your orders. Shoot the bolt of the courtyard's outer gate. Lock it, lash it fast. So there's this courtyard between the house. So the house is here. That is the main door. There's this courtyard here. That's where they've been feasting. And there's another door here. So the serving women are in here. When Eumaeus brings the bow, the serving women are supposed to lock this door. And Felicius goes and locks this door. Caught in our huge net, he says. And then they go and they slip back in. 432, line 274. Just now, Eurymachus held the bow in his hands. This is the second in command of the suitor, so to speak. Turning it over tip to tip before the blazing fire to heat the weapon. But he failed to bend it even so. And the suitor's high heart groaned to bursting. A black day, he exclaimed in wounded pride. A blow to myself. A blow to each man here. It's less the marriage that mortifies me now. That's galling too. But lots of women are left. Some in seagirt Ithaca, some in other cities. What breaks my heart is the fact that we fall so short of great Odysseus' strength. We cannot string his bow. A disgrace to ring in the ears of men to come. Eurymachus, Eupeithes' son Antinous countered. It will never come to that, as you well know. Today's a feast day up and down the island in honor of the archer god. Who flexes bows today? Set it aside, rest easy now. And all the axes, let's just leave them planted where they are. Trust me, no one's about to crash the gates of Laertes' son and carry off these trophies. Steward, pour some drops for the god in every cup. We'll tip the wine, then put the bow to bed. And first thing in the morning, have Melanthius bring the pick of his goats from all his herds, so we can burn the thighs to Apollo, god of archers. Then try the bow and finish off the contest. Welcome advice, and again they all agreed. Heralds sprinkled water over their hands for rinsing. The young men brimmed the mixing bowls with wine. They tipped first drops for the god in every cup, then poured full rounds for all. And now, once they'd tipped libations out and drunk their fill, the king of craft Odysseus said with all his cunning, Listen to me, you lords who court the noble queen. I have to say what the heart inside me urges. I appeal especially to Eurymachus, and you, brilliant Antinous, who spoke so shrewdly now. Give the bow a rest for today. Leave it to the gods. At dawn, the archer god will grant a victory to the man he favors most. For the moment, give me the polished bow now, won't you? So to amuse you all, I can try my hand, my strength. Is the old force still alive inside these gnarled limbs? Or has a life of roaming, years of rough neglect destroyed it long ago? Modest words that sent them all into hot, indignant rage, fearing he just might string the polished bow. So Antinous rounded on him, dressed him down. Not a shred of sense in your health, you filthy drifter. Not content to feast at your ease with us, the island's pride? Never denied your full share of the banquet, never. You can listen in on our secrets. No one else can eavesdrop on our talk. No tramp, no beggar. The wine has overpowered you, heady wine. The ruin of many another man, whoever gulps it down and drinks beyond his limit. Wine. It drove the centaur, famous Eurydion, mad in the halls of lion-hearted Pirithous. There to visit the Lapiths, crazed with wine, the headlong centaur bent to his ugly work in the prince's own house. His hosts sprang up, seized with fury, dragged him across the forecourt, flung him out of doors, hacking his nose and ears off with their knives. No mercy. The creature reeled away, still blind with drink, his heart like a wild storm, loaded with all the frenzy in his mind. And so the feud between mortal men and centaurs had its start. But the drunk was first to bring disaster on himself by drowning in his cups. You too, I promise you no end of trouble if you should string that bow. You'll meet no kindness in our part of the world. We'll sail you off in a black ship to Echetus, the mainland king who wrecks all men alive. Nothing can save you from his royal grip. So drink, but hold your peace. Don't take on the younger, stronger men. So Eurymachus, the second most influential suitor, tries the bow and he fails. Antinous, the ringleader of the suitors, instead of trying the bow, what does he suggest that they do?
Wear it into tomorrow.
Well, let's wait till tomorrow. Today's a feast day for which god? Apollo, the archer god. Who bends bows on the feast of Apollo? Let's wait till tomorrow. Everybody says, yeah, that sounds good. That sounds good. Odysseus, still in the skies, what does he say?
Yeah, they can try.
He says, hey, that's a great plan, but do you mind if I take a try? I'm just sort of curious. I'm old. I'm, gnarled. I'm just wondering if I could do it. You guys will probably get a good laugh out of it. How do the suitors respond to this? This dirty, scrawny beggar saying, hey, can I try to string this bow? And they say, go away. Stop it. What does Antinous say? What does he accuse Odysseus of? He's what?
The figures,
He calls him a filthy drifter. What else? What in particular does he accuse him of? He says, you're drunk. The wine has overpowered you. Heady wine, the ruin of many another man. Whoever gulps it down and drinks beyond his limit. And then Antinous goes on and he gives this story. He says, well, centaurs and people don't get along. Remember the story there? It's because the centaur got
Man, half horse.
half man, half horse. So it's a horse's body with a man's torso where the head would be. In Greek myth, centaurs are nasty creatures. They are violent, they are drunkards, and they are rapists. So if you have seen the Disney Hercules,
How do you? Oh, that's.
if you've seen the Disney Hercules, when he first meets Meg,
Yeah.
right, and there's that centaur, okay, that's what they're referring to in that scene. Of course, they don't spell it out explicitly because it's a children's movie, but yeah. And so he says, the centaurs, we don't get along with them because this one guy got drunk that one time. He's talking to Odysseus like he's a child or something.
Anybody doesn't know who he is?
I'm sorry?
You doesn't know who he is?
No, he hold your peace. Keep drinking and shut up. Antinous, line 350. Watchful Penelope stepped in. How impolite it would be. How wrong to scant whatever guest Telemachus welcomes to his house. You really think, if the stranger trusts so to his hands and strength that he strings Odysseus' great bow, he'll take me home and claim me as his bride? He never dreamed of such a thing, I'm sure. Don't let that ruin the feast for any reveler here. Unthinkable. Nothing could be worse. Polybus' son Eurymachus had an answer. Wise Penelope, daughter of Icarius, do we really expect the man to wed you? Unthinkable, I know, but we do recoil at the talk of men and women. One of the island's meaner sort will mutter, look at the riffraff courting a king's wife. Weaklings, look, they can't even string his bow. But along came this beggar drifting out of the blue, strung his bow with ease and shot through all the axes. Gossip will fly. We'll hang our heads in shame. Shame? Alert Penelope protested. How can you hope for any public fame at all? You, who disgrace, devour a great man's house and home. Why hang your heads in shame over next to nothing? Our friend here is a strapping, well-built man and claims to be the son of a noble father. Come, hand him the bow now. Let's just see. I tell you this, and I'll make good my word. If he strings the bow and Apollo grants him glory, I'll dress him in shirt and cloak and handsome clothes. I'll give him a good sharp lance to fight off men and dogs, give him a two-edged sword and sandals for his feet, and send him off wherever his heart desires. Mother, poised Telemachus broke in now. My father's bow. No king on earth has more right than I to give it or withhold it as I please. Of all the lords in Ithaca's rocky heights, or the islands facing Elis grazed by horses, not a single one will force or thwart my will, even if I decide to give our guest this bow, a gift outright to carry off himself. So, mother, go back to your quarters, tend to your own tasks, the distaff and the loom, and keep the women working hard as well. As for the bow now, men will see to that, but I most of all. I hold the reins of power in this house. Astonished, She withdrew to her own room. She took to heart the clear good sense in what her son had said. Climbing up to the lofty chamber with her women, she fell to weeping for Odysseus, her beloved husband, till watchful Athena sealed her eyes with welcome sleep. How does Penelope respond to Antinous' objection to giving this beggar Odysseus the bow? How does Penelope respond? She says, how impolite that would be. That would be wrong. He's Telemachus' guest. This is Telemachus' guest here. And you would prevent him from doing this? Eurymachus says, well, look, like if he does it, people are going to laugh at us. First of all, they'll say, wow, these guys are letting this random homeless dude try to marry the queen. Second of all, if he does it, we'll be a laughing stock. Wow, those big guys couldn't do it, and yet he was able to. Penelope responds, top of 435, fine. Look, if he does it, if he strings the bow and Apollo grants him glory, I'll dress him in shirt and cloak, in handsome clothes. I'll give him a good sharp lance to fight off men and dogs, give him a two-edged sword and sandals for his feet, and send him off wherever his heart desires. What does Penelope say she'll do if Odysseus manages to accomplish this challenge? Yeah, I'll give him stuff, I'll send him away. I'm not going to marry him. And then one of the more surprising things in this book, lines 382 or so to 395 or so, who then speaks up? Telemachus. What does Telemachus say? Go back to your room with the women. You deal with the women's stuff, the weaving and the spinning of thread. The men will deal with this. It's my bow to give to whom I please. I could give it to him as a gift, and you shouldn't stop me. All right, we'll pause there. Thank you very much. Remember, intro paragraphs on Jupiter tonight and book 16 questions tomorrow. Bye. Yes.